You're watching Tag TV, and we have heard this news that Asia Bibi has left Pakistan and arrived in Canada. We are trying to confirm the location and the place where she has landed, but so far we haven't gotten any news regarding that. But today we will be airing comments of Pakistani community leaders regarding this news and this development. Here is a short report regarding Asia Bibi.
Asia Bibi, a Christian woman who spent 8 years on death row in Pakistan for blasphemy before she was freed last year, has flown to Canada where she has reunited with her family, her lawyer has said. It is a big day, Saiful Malook told The Guardian. Asia Bibi has left Pakistan and reached Canada. She has reunited with her family. Justice has been dispensed. Bibi's arrival in Canada could mark the end of a 9-year ordeal for the farmer labourer whose case, based on a dubious accusation she had insulted the Prophet Muhammad, became linked to the assassinations of a provincial governor and a cabinet minister and a cause célèbre among Christian and human rights activists. She has been in protective custody since she was released from prison last year after Pakistan's top court acquitted her of blasphemy. By the afternoon of the verdict on 31 October, demonstrators wielding clubs had blocked highways and were pelting police with stones in cities including the capital, Islamabad, and Karachi. Islamist groups including Tehreek-e-Labbaik, DLP, a movement dedicated to upholding Pakistan's harsh blasphemy laws, protested for 3 days after the verdict, paralyzing parts of the country until the government struck an agreement that included a promise the case would be appealed. The Supreme Court upheld the acquittal in January. Canada had offered Bibi asylum, but close friends had told The Guardian the woman was being prevented from leaving by authorities.
I'm joined with Shan Tasir, who has been very active and on front line for Christians' rights, particularly in Pakistan, and his father was assassinated by an extremist in Asia Bibi case context. Shan, you heard this wonderful news that Asia has arrived in Canada, but we cannot replace your father who sacrificed his life for this noble cause. So what is your sentiment on this very special day?
Tahir, my sentiments are exactly the same as any sentient, compassionate, reasonable, rational person would have, that this is the triumph of common sense over bigotry and over obscurantism, because a grave injustice has just been put right. This woman has lost 9 years of her life to a false accusation, to wrongful imprisonment. Those 9 years can never be given back. But I believe we have gone some of the way to correcting a grave injustice, and justice has prevailed. So this is a victory for all rational people around the world. It is a victory for reason and for common sense.
And also in that particular context, that your father would never come back. And as a son of great father, how do you see this situation particularly?
Well, this is yet another vindication of his legacy for what he stood for. His spirit lives on. He lives on when the cause that he gave his life for comes to fruition. He gave his life for justice to be given to this woman, and she has now been given that justice. It proves so many things that we all knew. It proves that his stance was correct. His stance was just. He stood on the side of reason, of justice, and he paid the ultimate price. But it was not in vain.
So we see cases like Asia Bibi still, happening in Pakistan. There are people in jails, and there are still trials going on. So, what is your hope?
Well, Tahir, my hope, I'll answer that question later, but I think what's more important is that we have to realize that this struggle is not over. Just because Asia has been freed, which is great news, which we must celebrate, but we must be mindful of the peril that we must not believe that this struggle is over. There are 200 more Asia Bibis. There are 200 more innocent men, women, children, infirm, mentally, physically challenged, farm hands, workers, cycle mechanics, farm workers, laborers, the poorest of the poor, the most disenchanted people of Pakistani society in jail on false blasphemy charges, without trial, without due process of law. It is these people that we must redouble our efforts for. For example, there is Nabil Masih, a 16-year-old boy. What was his crime? Sharing a Facebook post. There's Ashfaq Masih, who was accused of blasphemy after a commercial dispute. There is Junaid Hafiz, a 32-year-old professor, a brilliant award-winning Fulbright scholar, who had a blasphemy charge laid against him over professional rivalry. There are 200 such cases in Pakistan, and it should be on our conscience. And this is my father's legacy. It is not just Asia Bibi that he gave his life for. He gave his life for anyone who suffers unjustly in Pakistan.
As you mentioned, there are about 200 cases already being witnessed by the people in Pakistan. So, what international communities and Pakistani government are doing to bring justice for those people?
Tahir, I can tell you that the international community is doing nothing. The international community is not involved. They have been involved in the very big cases that came to the forefront, such as Asia Bibi, but the international community is not involved in the plight of the other 200. And neither should they be. We don't need to look at the international community. As Pakistanis, what is the question to ask is, how involved are we? How much have we raised our voice for these 200 people? I can say that I can say that many people have, but there is still a lot of work to be done. It is important to realize that there are no other NGOs, there are no foreign communities, diplomats, there are no ambassadors that are going to come to your rescue. It is the duty of people who have a social contract with the government of Pakistan, people who are connected to Pakistan, for them to raise their voice. Our work is cut out in front of us because the level of consciousness is very, very low. Asia Bibi has been the poster child of this cause, and now that the poster child has been released, we run the risk, we run the peril of this cause being relegated. Let it not be relegated, and I want to say that the responsibility for that is for people like yourself and me who are connected to Pakistan.
In your knowledge, is Pakistani government looking into this matter seriously?
Not at all. They wish it goes away. They have done. The government has done some very positive steps. They've done much more than the previous two democratically elected governments before them, which were marked by inaction in this issue. This government has taken some good steps. They have sent a very strong message to groups such as the
Labak Tahrir?
Tehreek Labak, yes, such as the Tehreek Labak, which have been spearheading blasphemy accusations. They've been sent a very, very strong message that this won't be tolerated. There has been a crackdown on their leadership, and there's been a crackdown on many of their cadres who are involved in the general gangsterism that followed Asia's acquittal. After that, what we see now and what we saw in the when the previous Supreme Court verdict came in, surprisingly, was supporters of the Tehreek Labak with posters and placards standing at the Lahore Press Press Club. It is amusing to see this change of their tactics after the way they behaved when the first acquittal of hers came out in October. The point is that this change of behavior has come about because the government has sent a very strong message to these groups that they cannot continue this kind of gangsterism in the name of blasphemy, inventing, spearheading, creating charges, blasphemy charges, false charges, and riling the issue up. But they, in terms of addressing the underlying systematic injustice behind a law which itself is unjust, which is dysfunctional, I don't think this government has the political will to address that issue, and that issue is certainly going to require a lot of will. There is a abeyance in blasphemy charges in Pakistan, but there is nothing being done to speed up the judicial process for people who are in jail without trial and not receiving justice. That is what this government needs to do, and they are not doing much.
So you are saying on one hand that they are better than the previous two elected governments, but still not doing enough for those roughly over 200 cases.
No, I didn't say that. For those 200 cases, I said they are doing nothing. I didn't say they are not doing enough. They are doing absolutely zero.
Nothing. Thank you for this clarification. And Asia Bibi case was a high-profile case, and that's why the international communities paid some attention, and the Pakistani government had to do something. And we appreciate whatever they did, because that's what at least required. So I would like to ask, is there any hope that we could press Pakistani government to do things for those 200 cases?
Of course there is. We simply have to raise our voice at any case we choose. Look at Junaid Hafiz. It's been 6 years and his case has not progressed beyond the lowest courts. Why has it not progressed? Because the one reason is that the first lawyer that he had, Rashid Rahman, has been shot by Jamaat-e-Islami students who accused him. These same activists come into the courtroom and hurl accusations at the judge at every hearing. As a result, the judge is hesitant to give a fair decision in such a case. Now this kind of flagrant, blatant violation of the law, gangsterism in court cases is something that we can talk about today. I mean, his case is continuing as we speak. Week by week, it's being adjourned. We can speak up about this. We can demand from our Minister of Human Rights, Shirin Mazari, from Imran Khan, from the Interior Minister, from the entire close Senate of advisors around Imran Khan, what is happening? How can a case remain? How can a case not be heard in the lowest courts in 6 years? Obviously, a miscarriage of justice has happened. With such a miscarriage of justice having taken place, the pressure should be on the government to either to dismiss the case immediately, or to pressure the courts to make a decision on the case immediately. Every day that goes by that a decision is not made is another day taken away from the life of Junaid Hafiz. In his case, it's been 6 years. In Asia's case, it's been 9 years. The trajectory that we are following, his case will take as long, if not longer, than Asia Bibi's. So it's one thing to celebrate her release, but it's a crying shame if we do nothing for the likes of Junaid Hafiz, Nabil Masih, Ashfaq Masih, and the 197 others.
Thank you very much, Shan, for your time and for your valuable comments, please.
Thank you very much, Tahir. Before going, there's just one more thing I want to say that we need to speak about. The law itself. The blasphemy law of Pakistan is inherently a faulty law. The government, among other things, needs judicial reform. It needs to look at the law itself, because all laws have to be clearly defined so that citizens can adjust their behavior accordingly and understand the law. The Blasphemy Law of Pakistan, Section 295C, is a very vaguely defined law. It describes blasphemy as any remark directly, indirectly, said, implied, through whether through imputation, through insinuation, directly, indirectly. It gives such a broad explanation of what blasphemy can be that it becomes almost meaningless and therefore becomes a charge that can apply in all situations wherever it is needed in order to settle a score. Such a law is inherently prone to abuse. So, among other things, the government also requires judicial reform, and this law has to be, if not repealed, then it has to be very, very seriously amended.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Finally, Asia Bibi has arrived in Canada. It's a big news for everyone, particularly for Pakistani Christian community. I'm joined with Pakistani Christian community leader Mrs. Ingrid Nasser, who also represents Charismatic Social Integration of Canada. Mrs. Ingrid Nasser, how do you receive this news?
We are certainly very happy and very relieved. And I think there is a good reason for this, because any person who has been wrongfully blamed and wrongfully convicted and has finally received justice that she deserved and been freed by the court of law should be enjoying freedom in the real sense of the word. And we are really happy that finally Asia, who is entitled to this freedom according to the law of the land, will be able to have a free existence after such a long time.
As you and I both are from Pakistani origin, and we know that this is not the only case that was wrongfully convicted. There are dozens cases, particularly in Pakistani Christian community over there. They are still behind the bars. And what would you say in this context?
Well, this is very sad, and it's also very painful and hurtful, because the Christian community has been a big part in the creation and building of Pakistan. And to be treated in such a wrongful way as to give it the title of being persecution, certainly they do not deserve that. No community of any kind, any caste, any creed, any belief, any background deserves persecution. And certainly not the Christians of Pakistan, because they are a big part in the formation and, like I just said, in the building of Pakistan. They are the crux of the backbone of Pakistan. And to be persecuted in this manner is certainly very hurtful and very painful.
One thing is persecution, which is, of course, needed to be condemned at all levels. But also there is a sad part that Pakistani Christians in Pakistan, they are discriminated at all levels and a daily basis. So what would you demand Pakistani government in that regard?
Well, the first thing, Mr. Gora, I would like to say is that Imran Khan's government is trying whatever they can do, but I'm thinking maybe that is not enough. There is still a lot of room in which the government can work to bring about, to close this disparity. There is a lot of discrimination. We hear about it daily, and we have experienced that ourselves as well. And that is the reason why we have left Pakistan and chosen to live in another country and call it home. But the important thing here to remember is that any minority community, and I'm speaking here particularly, like you mentioned, about the Christian community in Pakistan, they are very talented. And it is a tragedy that they are not being given those opportunities to do what they can to contribute to the welfare of this country and towards the progress of this country. And I think the root cause of this discrimination is education, ignorance. And if that can be taken care of in educating people and trying to remove this barrier of ignorance, I think that would be a huge step in eliminating this difference.
But on the other hand, I see discrimination of Pakistani Christians in Pakistani institutions. And those institutions are not led or run by uneducated people, they are led and run by educated people.
Like I said, education is education. Education doesn't mean getting a degree. Education is, changing how your mind thinks. It's not being ignorant about matters. It's being knowledgeable about what the issues are, how to handle issues. It's not just about getting a paper and saying, oh, here is my document to show that I'm educated. Education is not about getting a degree or getting into college or into a university. Education in its right sense and meaning is being able to think right, to do the right thing, to make the right decisions. That is what an educated person truly does. And unfortunately, in our country, the stress is on, oh, I am a BA, I'm a BEd, I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm that. I'm an educated person. But where is your thinking? What are you thinking about? You have a closed mind. And that doesn't help.
So as we hear this fantastic news that finally Asia Bibi has arrived in Canada after all those ordeals she went through. So how would Pakistani Christian community in Canada particularly celebrate this news?
It is a point of celebration because it's a vindication for a person who was innocent. And after, our conversation about how the Christian community is treated in Pakistan, this is a big point of celebration. Yes, we can use that word here. And surely the Christian community will come forward and do whatever it can to help her settle into the fabric of Canada, to help her with a family, the social integration part of it, educating herself, knowing what is best for her in order to make a new country her home, which is really a very sad thing to say, that a person has to go to another place and start a new life, call in a totally strange land her new home. And it's a struggle. It's not an easy thing to do. And so our community will do its best to help her to settle into a new life, begin to call this place a new home, and to help her family do the best they can to make a new start in their lives.
Do you know anything where Asia Bibi is now, in which city and in which province of Canada?
No, we don't. And we got the news just as everybody else did. And certainly with time, as things become better and clearer, we will have more insights into that.
And lastly, I would like to know what Pakistani Christian community organizations particularly be doing in terms of settlement and integration of Asia and her family in Canada.
Well, it's what, you and I have struggled with, and the difficulties and hurdles that any immigrant in a new country overcomes. It's, first of all, learning a new language, learning a totally different way of life. And of course, I think for Asia, she has been through so much psychological trauma. And I'm sure there are a lot of issues that her children are facing a lot of questions that they don't have answers to, and so they will need a lot of help to erase all of this confusion and questioning that they have. So they will need a lot of help, and we will do whatever we can to make their lives much better and easier than what they've been through.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ingrid Nasser, for your time and for your comments.
Thank you so much. And just so you know that we are holding a candlelight vigil tonight for the Sri Lanka victims and the massacre of the 3 churches and the hotels in Sri Lanka. And it is an interfaith, inter-community event, and we do look forward to that, and we are hoping that we can bring more attention to the persecuted minorities, particularly the Christians that have been targeted in so many countries. So we just wanted you to be aware if there is an audience there that would like to join us tonight at 7 to 9, downtown Brampton. They are most welcome to come for the candlelight vigil.
Thank you very much for this message as well, and we'll also let our viewers know that this vigil is going on tonight, and hopefully many community members would participate in it. Thank you for your time.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So you're watching TAG TV's News and Views in Bilatakalluf show with Tahir Gora.